So a couple of days ago on stream, I reacted to a bunch of NBA hot takes from you guys. And in this video, we are going to be going over some of your hot takes. And before we get on, if you guys are new to the channel, subscribe. We are somehow so close to 3,000 subscribers, which is insane. But anyway, now let's get on to the video. So for the first hot take, we have got Trae to the Spurs, and they win a chip within 2 years. Now that is an interesting one. That is a real interesting one when it comes to these takes, because that's within 2 years. So you're saying like Victor Wembanyama by year 3 wins a championship with Trae Young. How good do you think Trae Young is? But let's see, do I think it's possible? So in the next 2 years, you gotta get past OKC and you gotta get past Minnesota. As young as OKC and Minnesota are, I think it's going to be tough. Trae Young, I don't think makes San Antonio better than OKC. I really don't. And even though I think that, like, what's his name is much better, I think Wemby's much better than Chet. Like, if they go and add a, like, Nick Claxton or another big, I think it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard to do. I think Wemby probably does win a ring. I think players are going to want to play with Wemby. I'm just not sure Trae Young is that guy. Like, not that Trae Young's not the guy, because I do think Trae Young will immediately help Wembanyama. I think he's going to make Wemby better. He's going to make the Spurs a playoff team. And you've got to be a playoff team before you win a ring. And we saw from OKC, no one really makes it in their first time. Other than 2021 Phoenix, I can't think off the top of my head of a team that has made even close to winning a championship in their kind of first run around. And it's unlikely the Spurs are going to be anything more than a play-in team next year. Like, it's hard to go from being as bad as they were to a playoff team, especially in the Western Conference. So, I think that's a tough one. I doubt it. I really doubt they managed to pull that one off. So next we have got Pacers beat the Celtics in 6 games by a guy whose account name is Victor Wembanyama. I mean, there was a Victor Wembanyama YouTube account. I'm pretty sure it was him, but I don't think it's this one. But the Pacers beating the Celtics in 6. So you've got... Okay, so no, Game 6 is in Indiana. I was about to say, you've got them winning multiple road games. So I think they got to win multiple road games winning 6, don't they? No, they don't, since they're at home. They got to win 1 road game. And I can't see how the Pacers do it. I really can't see how the Pacers do it. Like, I think the Pacers are good. I like Indiana. I really actually like Indiana. I think Indiana are a genuinely good team. I think they play unbelievable offense. I don't know how great they are defensively. But in 6 games is... Obviously, it doesn't really matter when it is. But obviously, they close it at home. Which could happen. But I can't see the Celtics losing to the Pacers. Like, I don't think the Celtics have been good in the playoffs. I don't think the Celtics are going to beat whoever comes out of the West. But I do think the Pacers are... Not that they're, like, supremely overrated, because they're not. The Pacers are far from an overrated team. But what I will say about the Pacers is that, like, they struggled getting past 2 teams that were crippled. Like, they didn't win either of their first 2 series convincingly. And they faced Milwaukee without Middleton, Dame, and Giannis. And they faced New York with a, like, 50% healthy player. With, like, a 50% healthy, what's his name? Like, Brunson at times. With Josh Hart playing every minute of the series. With DiVincenzo balling, but, like, they were also missing Randall, they were missing Mitchell Robinson, they were missing Bojan Bogdanovic, they were missing OG Anunoby for a lot of the series. So for me, I'm like, I just can't make that. I can't say that that's like a take that I agree with. Okay, now this is a wild hot take from the same guy. Trae Young will be traded to the Charlotte Hornets for LaMelo Ball. The Charlotte Hornets for LaMelo Ball. Importance of trade parts not important. And you'll have Trae Young and Brandon Miller. There is no way. There's no way that trade happens. Trae for LaMelo Ball. Why would either team make that trade? Why would the Hornets give up their like young potential superstar point guard? And why would the Hawks trade for an injury-prone LaMelo Ball? That is wild. That is absolutely, like, that is one of the weirdest things where it's like, I don't get why either team makes that trade. Like, there's no logic for either team making the trade. It's a 2K My League trade. I agree with that. That is literally something you would see in 2K My League where people trying to match up, like, star for star. Like, that is an awful, awful, awful trade. Like, it doesn't make either team better. LaMelo obviously has been injury prone, so he doesn't have the greatest value. Trae Young, but he does have value to the Hornets. Trae Young is Trae Young still. Trae Young's Trae Young. You don't want necessarily to get rid of him if you're Atlanta for LaMelo, who's injured. But you also don't want to give up LaMelo if you're Charlotte. No, that's such a bad trade. That's such a bad trade. Zach Edey is going to be as good as Joel Embiid. What am I reading? What am I actually reading right here? I like Zach Edey. And I think if you take Zach Edey with a top 15 pick, it's not a bad one. I think Zach Edey could be a really good player. He's more mobile than we thought he is. He's a lot more mobile than we thought he is. But still, Zach Edey better than Embiid. Embiid is like, if you think that Embiid is the best player in the world right now, I'm not going to say you're wrong. I'm not going to say you're wrong, honestly. If you actually think that Joel Embiid is the best player in the world, as of right now, I'm not going to argue with you. But still, Zach Edey better than him. Zach Edey's, he was the best player in college, but like, Zach Edey literally could not see the floor for the Canada national team last year. He may not see the floor this year for the freaking Canada national team, the Olympics. But Joel Embiid is an MVP, would have been a 2-time MVP, and is one of the top 7 or 8 basketball players in the world at the lowest. Zach Edey? Zach Edey? As much as how good Brunson is, he's another version of 2017 Isaiah Thomas. I mean, I've said it the entire time. That has been my thing, is that he is said it the entire time. But yeah, for Isaiah Thomas being a 2017 version of Jalen Brunson, I think that's kind of obvious. The way the teams are constructed, they were almost like the exact, like it was the perfect comparison. Like Isaiah Thomas, Allen Iverson's 2001, like those teams were like structured in a way that they were going to succeed in a very specific way. The only way they're going to succeed was through that one player. And that is obviously what Jalen Brunson was. Not a knock on him, like comparing him to 01 Allen Iverson and comparing him to like a really, really good player in Isaiah Thomas is like isn't a knock on him. But yeah, that's kind of the level he's at. Like he's not absolute superstar level, but he's a hell of a player. Hot take, France will become a powerhouse nation of basketball. It's very, very hard to argue that because it's a weird one. It's like they might be the powerhouse of international basketball. Like they might be a powerhouse of that. But when it comes to being a powerhouse, like you've got to have more than one superstar. And I like Rudy Gobert. He's not a superstar. Risa Shea's not going to be a superstar. Salone's not going to be a superstar. Ntilikina obviously wasn't a superstar. Killian Hayes is not a superstar. They got a lot of NBA players. And I think that because of the way international play is, they have more experience with it. And likes of Gobert and Wembanyama suit even more. Like Embiid, not playing for them doesn't really matter. Alex Sarr is French as well. The problem is like, they might win at international level because they got a lot of guys that suit the game. Like Rudy Gobert in international play is better than any center that America have, including Joel Embiid. Just for that specific, the way the rules are, he's going to be more effective because he's more used to playing the rules, whereas Embiid, I'm not sure has ever played FIBA rules. Different way of playing basketball, smaller court, you can stand under the basket. But having him and Wembanyama is going to be tough for teams to beat. Problem is France really haven't produced any point guards. Like if you look at their roster for the Olympics, like they're probably, or their extended squad, they've got Strazel in there. And like, look, Strazel's a good player, but the gap between Strazel and the USA's 15th best point guard is big. So like they really are struggling from the guard position. Like they're still bringing out Nando De Colo. They're not bringing Thomas Hurdle because he played in Russia. So it's going to be it's going to be kind of tough for that. But as far as the talent goes, there's a lot of, like, for lack of a better word, there's a lot of guys with a lot of length, a lot of bigs coming out there, a lot of big wings coming out of France. It's just, as far as guards are concerned, there's not many great guards in France. Clingan will be a top 10 center. That is it possible? Is it possible? Like, I'm trying to think off the top of my head. It's like, could he be a top 10 center? So, to be a top 10 center, he's got to, because he's going to be a defensive center, he's probably got to average 2.5 blocks a game, or at least 2 blocks a game. And average about 14, 15 points a game, while maybe being able to spread the floor, because he's not particularly athletic. He's probably just like a worse version, as of right now, probably like a worse version of a Walker Kessler. He reminds you of Sean Bradley. He's a lot more mobile than Sean Bradley. So, I don't know with Clingan. Like, I'm not sure Clingan is going to be a starter soon in his career. It depends on where he goes. Like, if he goes to Washington, he might actually start. But, like, if he goes to Houston, he's not starting. There's a lot of teams in the lottery he's not starting for. He was a monster at UConn, yeah, but college basketball isn't what college basketball used to be. We can't judge people necessarily how they play in college because, one, a lot of times the best guys in college sometimes struggle, and then two, some guys that struggle in college do well, like a Derek Lively. So it's always hard to overrate a performance in college unless you see transferable skills. And I think that any of the weaknesses that Zach Edey has are also weaknesses Donovan Clingan has. So I don't know. I don't know what to do with that one, but I'll say no. Yeah, I don't think it'll be top 10. Player development was more situational based than player based. I actually agree with that, and I assume what you're saying is like the team where you go in the situation is more important for your development than the actual player itself, and I do agree because there is so many situations where players will develop. Certain teams are good at developing players. Certain teams are good at developing certain types of players. Certain coaches are very good at developing certain types of players. So I actually do strongly agree with that. A lot of the time, those first 2 or 3 years, there are players that could be stars and they're just in bad situations and they just don't develop. Or vice versa, they're guys that probably should be out of the league, but because they're able to develop into a role, they're able to develop into a system, they're able to get onto the court, and the more they're on the court, the more they develop, depending on the coach. So I actually think it is more dependent on the situation on the player. Obviously, the player's ability to work and the player's work ethic does matter, but I do think you're right in that it is more situational than it is the player-based, because let's be real, if a player gets to the NBA, 99 times out of 100, they have a good work ethic, they're disciplined, and they have talent. So from there on, like, if you're talking about it from like the time someone's 10 years old, some guys are just never going to be capable of developing to a high level basketball player. But if you've made the NBA, you're the cream of the crop anyway. So I do agree that it probably is more situational based, because these guys are all elite basketball players, and there has to be a reason why some massively succeed and others don't, despite the fact some guys, like, even for example, like a Thon Maker, supposedly had the craziest work ethic ever. It's just he was not in good situations in his career, and then once he was traded from Milwaukee, he went to a bunch of bad situations in a row.